Steve Moran here with Marketing Monday. I am so excited. We have been sort of talking internally, and I'm not sure that it should actually be Marketing Monday. I think it should be Move In Monday, because what we are here to do is to help you get more move-ins. And more move-ins are important because it means you can serve residents better. And you can, and if you have more resources financially, that gives you even more stuff, but it's really about the people. So today I am talking to John Lariccia and Teddy Helfrich. Did I do that right, Teddy?
I've been. You got mine. You butchered John's though.
Oh, I did.
Steve, we've met so many times.
I know. It's so bad. So these guys are with WelcomeHome, which is without a doubt the best CRM in the world right now. I actually don't say even senior living CRM. I know that's the only place you're selling, but I've looked at a ton of CRMs, and you could probably conquer the whole world with what you're doing. I think that, in fact, if somebody came to you, I don't know why anybody would use Salesforce instead of you guys, to tell you the truth. It's just, I know there's some people in senior living who do that. So I'm gonna stop talking for a minute, and I'm gonna actually dig in. Do you want to talk a little bit about WelcomeHome a little bit, and then we're gonna look at some statistics. You guys have the ability to look at something like 1,300 senior living communities all across the country in more than 100 organizations. And you've got some surprising stuff to talk about, so we're going to look at that. But let's just sort of do a quick introduction of who you guys are, and then we'll jump into some data.
Yeah. So this is John Lariccia. I'm the founder and CEO.
I don't know.
It's all fine. It's all fine of WelcomeHome. And first and foremost, thank you for your kind words. We have no intention of serving anyone other than senior living operators. We think that industry is in desperate need, and that's our sole focus, because it is such a unique space with such great people. And then second, yes, I do think that we have the very best CRM, but what we're striving to do is be the very best partner to all of our different operators, and that involves the CRM, the platform itself. It involves the support they're going to receive, and then it involves insights and data. And when I started the company 5 years ago, before I even thought that they were going to go down this path of a CRM, it was with a kind of focus on how can we deliver more insights, how can we deliver better data, because I know that there's a lot of different sources out there, and either it wasn't trusted by the market or it was a little too shallow. And now that we have, again, 1,300 communities across almost 100 operators nationwide, we feel confident that what we have is a snapshot as to what really is going on, and we augment that with third-party sources that are publicly and privately reported, just to understand what exactly is going on, not just with our customers but with the broader market. So.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we're going to explore today, and this is, Teddy, I think where your insights will be hugely valuable, is we are going to be talking about what the data means, because data, sort of in the abstract, is interesting, but really the interesting questions are is what did it actually mean. So, shall we jump into it? Let me pull some slides up.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so let's talk about occupancy.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. There's obviously a lot of third parties that are coming out and sharing what's going on with occupancy. And first thing that would absolutely align on is that occupancy is continuing, census continues to improve, right, which is incredibly encouraging. We're just showing a snapshot since December, but you go further back, in 12 of the 13 months, trailing months, you've seen improvement every single month, right? So you continue to go in the right direction. What you can see, though, is from December to January, we did have a dip, and that's because the news cycle does matter. right? You not only saw a dip in the number of occupancy, you saw a dip in number of move-ins, you saw the dip in number of new leads that occurred in the winter months as Omicron fears started to have an impact, right? People are still a little skittish. Unquestionably, though, there's a lot of ways to go, right? This is a blended average that shows that overall occupancy is in the just south of 79%, nowhere near where any operator wants their census to be. So we have ways to go. The one thing that's somewhat surprising is I'm on public record saying that IL was going to have a harder time because during COVID, seniors have been able to figure out how to replicate a lot of what they got from the IL. As a human, I'm glad that I was wrong, because what we're seeing on the ground is, all the DoorDashes and Instacarts of the world can't substitute for the socialization that you get for IL. And that's what we're hearing from the operators. That's what we're seeing with the data, is that folks who have been sequestered in their homes, being able to replicate activities, being able to replicate meals, can't replicate human interactions. And so they're moving into IL at a very rapid rate, which is great. By the way, that same article, I predicted that Top Gun Maverick be awesome. I got that one right.
And you were right about that. So I don't think we've got a slide on that. Maybe we do, but can you give us a little bit more of a breakdown or color on the differences between assisted and independent, and maybe memory care?
Yeah. So what we've seen in memory care is that memory care didn't take quite the same hit during COVID. It was a much more shallower decline, and it's been a shallower increase out of it. Assisted and independent had a dramatic decline, right? It was almost 10 to 14 points from peak to trough as to what was going on with their occupancy. And independent is rebounded at a much faster rate.
Okay. And these numbers are actually a bit lower than some of the other industry numbers that have been out there. So do you have any thoughts about why there's a differential?
I think the challenge is about reporting methodology. So much of the current data that's collected and shared is based on folks self-reporting. And the reality is most of the public data is 10% higher, because I think what ends up happening, it's human nature, is I round up a little, right? I don't grossly misreport. I just round up, right? The glass is mostly full. And so I make sure it's completely full. And so I think that's the dynamic that's going on. Again, that where there is consistency, because I think that there's value in the consistency, is that everyone would say things are improving, right? It's just as to where do we think that our starting point was and where's our current ending point.
Yeah. Well, I think I do think that the right number is a bit important, because if I am at 80% occupancy, I know that's not where I want to be, but if the real average is 79, I don't feel as bad as if it's 83 or whatever those numbers are, right? And so I think that benchmark becomes important. One more question I guess I have, and I'm really fascinated by this, and can you talk about spreads between, are you seeing buildings that are up in the 90s and maybe others that are, this is an average, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's enormous spreads. There's enormous spreads across our operator clients. There's enormous spreads even within operator clients. You try to isolate down as to, okay, fine, is this an issue that we have in Southern Florida, or is this an issue that we're having in this zip code? And what you find is that it's usually controllable factors. It's not extraneous. That you can go in and you sit in Fort Lauderdale and you will find buildings that are 95% full, and you find other buildings that are 70% full. You will be able to find operators that make a change in the leadership, or change in the tools, or change in how they go about setting goals that are based on realistic targets that aren't demoralizing, that can can turn it around and get those buildings up in some dramatic fashions. We have several operators that have taken over communities that have been divested because they're viewed as almost tainted assets, and in very short order are able to double occupancy and get to the 90s. So there's absolutely spread. Our goal is not just through the technology, but also through our extended team to make sure that we're mining the data and we're mining and identifying insights to say, all right, fine, how do we make sure that the entire portfolio is both at a tighter band in terms of variability, but also much closer to the top of the range rather than the bottom.
So, Teddy, I look at this number and I'm sitting in a building that has 72% occupancy. And I don't want to be at 79. I want to be at 94. Help me out. What do I need to do to make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, first off, Steve, the things that we look at when we provide you data and insights and when we provide any of our customers and things like that is it's not the benchmark is great to know, but it is what you do with that number in order to actually affect, how you're doing it, because it could be different in region. It could be different in market. It can be different in care type. There's a lot of variability, right? And so when you look at you want to improve, how do you do it? The first major change that we have to align on that happened since COVID, since 2020, is that leads are increasingly coming from digital sources and paid aggregators. So what that means is if you have a sales team that still treats digital leads as secondary, as they were going in pre-2020, then your conversion rates are being lower. And then the next thing is, and John's going to talk a little bit more about the actual data, but the next thing in terms of all of this is your next move in is already in your CRM, right? And so understanding where you have to move people through, how fast you have to move them through, and how often you have to get them there is key. So the things that we want to look at are what are your best converting lead sources? What is the amount of time of effort that you are resulting and putting forward towards those conversion sources? What's the amount of time and effort you're putting towards sources that aren't converting that you could be allocating towards other things, as well as what are your metrics on how quickly you're getting people into tour? Are you getting them in before everybody else? And then furthermore, how often you are completing them all the way through the tour. And I think there's some stats that John's going to talk a little bit about that as well.
Perfect. So one thing you said, I really want to come back and hit on because I just think it's so important, and it's one of those sort of life lessons, right? And that's that you've got to look at the things that are not working and do less of that. And I'm afraid too often human nature, I know I've got stuff in my own life that where I've got stuff that's actually not working very well in my life, probably from a personal and business standpoint. And it's hard to give those things up. So I just think that's huge. So let's talk about move outs, new inquiries, and move-ins.
Yeah. I mean, so if we just look over the course of this year, first move outs are down. Probably not a surprise, right? When you compare the time periods and move outs are down, but nonetheless, it helps, right? The operators are in the front lines are doing an amazing job making sure that those residents are happy, and that the best way to keep a building full is by not losing folks. And so you see that move outs are down. But at the same time, the sales teams are incrementally adding more move-ins than move outs. And that's through a variety of things. First, number of new leads are up 6% this year in the first 6 months compared to the first 6 months of last year. The number of tours are up 14%. So those leads are converting at a better rate. And then move-ins are up 42%. Those tours are converting into new residents. The thing that, and Teddy alluded to it, those leads are disproportionately coming from digital and aggregators. I think what's ended up happening is that during this period of lockdown, where you were less likely to stop by a community, the sales director of the CRD was less likely to go out and meet with attorneys and clergymen and nurse practitioners and discharge planners and generate leads through those non-paid sources, non-digital sources.
Do you see that shifting back now, or do you think that's going to be a forever new trend?
I think that it is going to shift a little on the margins, and I think the better performing will not throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? They'll recognize that, okay, even though most of my leads are digital and aggregator, not most of my move-ins are, right? Because they convert at a better rate than I think historically, but still not as well as if I have a wonderful event that has both residents and family members and prospective residents all in one place. And so this is the challenge, I think, with the sales director, right? That they have to both be doing that external development, knocking off the rust and getting out of the community, while at the same time recognizing that those digital leads are here to stay and there has some value and I need to respond to them.
And Steve, I think one of the things to highlight on that too is our seniors got much better at technology through the course of COVID because they had to, right? I started doing with my wife's grandmother. She was actually a community for one of our clients, and Sundays we did a family Zoom with her. Never before had she done Zoom or anything like that, but she started setting it up. So, I mean, they're getting more familiar with technology, and the adult children, for the assisted living and memory care side, they're 3 years older than they were pre-pandemic. So they themselves are also more technologically advanced in order to get these leads in. So things that you're going to see that people have to do, response times in the age of COVID across all industries, food delivery, anything like that, they went up, right? So now people expect faster response times across all platforms. So when you're getting an increase of digital leads, they're also expecting faster speed to lead response times and getting in touch with them, faster times to get them scheduled in for a tour. So I think what we're seeing with the operators that are really doubling down on quality of service towards their clients in terms of being hyper responsive, they are crushing it in terms of all of their ratios because there is a high demand, especially among these digital leads, of I want a community that is hyper responsive anytime I'm reaching out.
So let's actually talk a little bit more about how you make sure you respond rapidly. Can you just talk about, if it were my community and I'm saying, I'm seeing these digital leads, I'm not getting anywhere, maybe I'm doing something wrong. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's setting up a central repository for your leads to come in, right? So with Welcome Home, we do that. Obviously, we can have all these leads flow in anywhere because we have a mobile app, right? And so not only can your sales counselor now, while they're walking back, they just finished a tour and they're walking back to their office, can they get pinged and get a lead and instantly call them, and the call can be recorded and they can listen back. You have the ability to do everything from anywhere, but you can also centralize that to a central intake inside the company as well. So we're seeing operators that are focusing on who needs to get the leads, as well as how quickly their best people are at responding. And a lot of that is the movement to mobile. When we see people do a movement to mobile, and utilizing the mobile app more than others, we see an increase in inquiry to tour ratios right off the bat.
Yeah, really? and I think that the movement to mobile also, texting in a very short period of time has become the default, right? Yep. If I even thought 3 or 4 years ago, texting was just what I did with my kids. It's just what I did with my friends. Texting now is how business is conducted, and it is how serious business is conducted. And this whole topic, we were joining a client's annual meeting, and we'd done some pre-work and asking them as to what the hot button issues were. And one of the themes that came out was that so many of my leads are digital. Digital ads or digital leads aren't very good. And again, digital leads are not going to convert nearly as well as a recommendation from an employee or from a family member, but they are getting better by time. And just to make this point, we asked, I'm like, all right, fine. How many folks here have made a major purchase over the past year? And, you know, a bunch of people. How many? Car, house. And I'm like, where did you start? All of them started digitally. It's like, all right, then how did you communicate with the salespeople, with the real estate agent? It was by text. And it is accepted, right? It's now expected. And it creates an intimacy when you're suddenly on a texting relationship, right? You start to get shorthand, and it's true for any kind of relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship or it's a real estate relationship or it's a community sales director with a family member. You just get in a rhythm of talking to them, and because the medium historically was one you use for friends and family, that halo starts to cascade over.
So I am fascinating. So first off, I use text like everybody else does. I actually hate it. I used to, in the early days of text, I'd start getting into these conversations with somebody and I'd go, I'm not doing this anymore. You have to pick up the phone and call me. But what I love about it is that in reality, I can have human to human engagement where I'm less invested, which in a sales situation is actually an advantage. Where does this fit in with chat bots?
Yeah, I would say that on the chat perspective and things like that, it's the same concept, right? People they want more responsiveness, so they're using chat, and we want those to funnel directly into the CRM as well, which is why we maintain integrations with chats. But I view texting as a key indicator that they're going to buy. Honestly, if you think about it in terms of your prospect's lifestyle, let's you do assisted living and memory care, and you're talking to the adult child. Well, the adult child is likely someone like me who's sitting on a webinar or at an office and working, doing sales calls, and I don't really necessarily have time to have a phone conversation all the time. So if you text me, I can likely text you from within a meeting. And it's personal and it goes in. So texting, chatting, there are things that people can multitask and do because this is something that they have to do outside their normal workday because it's causing them a lot of stress. So whatever ways that you can look at to alleviate the barrier for them to contact you are going to increase your sales.
This is actually so cool, right? Because it means I can actually ask the questions I want to ask. And how many times have you ever been in an in-person sales situation where, you know, buying a car or a house or something, and you go, oh man, I wish I had asked, or the salesperson just drones on and on and on and on. And with texting, you basically make all those problems go away. This is really cool. This is like, we ought to talk more about this. Got a couple more slides I want to look at here. Okay, what do I do tomorrow morning?
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
We sort of hit some of this already, but let's walk.
Yeah, no, and so I mean the first, and this is what's challenging about being in a community and being a sales director. You have to have so many hats that oftentimes are in conflict that you're wearing. The first is you have to be the tortoise and the hare, right? You have to be quick twitch. That as soon as those leads are coming in, you're following it up, and you're following up with intentionality and with seriousness in order to make that connection, right? But that connection might move in record speed, or it could be stretching out over months or years. We are seeing that in terms of month to month across operators, the time to move in is swinging wildly. And it is, again, partially because of the news cycle that folks could get frozen in time just to see how the next strain is going to play out, just to see whether they are able to be in the in the buying zone, or if you're going to have a family member have to return to work. So you have to do both, right? The second thing is you have to view every initial prospect as an opportunity, right? You have to let go of, I think, the historical preconceived notions that digital leads aren't people that are serious. Those are folks that have made the effort to reach out. And so, again, treat it as a serious opportunity. The third is get out of the building or have people to yours. Right? What we're saying is connect with your professional referrals, host an event. I love events in communities. I know that they can be challenging to execute. Welcome Home is trying to make that as easy as possible by our built-in event manager. But events, when well executed, with just a little bit of forethought, not necessarily a lot of money, have all of these different benefits. It's beneficial to your employees because they're excited about this is a place to work that has these kind of events. It's beneficial to your residents, and happy residents and happy employees hosting potential future residents makes the sale so much easier. And so what we say is, host those events as well as get out of the building, look at your data, figure out the folks that are most likely to refer a future resident and go see them.
How many events a month, a year, a quarter, or a week?
Well, it very much depends on the nature of the building and the size of the building, but I think as a good rule of thumb, there should be 2 events a month. You should try to do a prospective resident event. You should do a refer event. That's my point of view as to what we think actually will move the needle for your average typical community.
And Steve, just to tie this all together, the last one is mine your database. And mine your database applies for every single one of these things. Yeah. When we're talking about refer development, on average, your religious organizations, they have high conversion rates, but very low volume of referrals. And they're really nice people to talk to. And so a lot of people spend a lot, if they're tasked with referral development, they're going to spend a lot of time with, religious organizations. Whereas, you could touch them less amount of times and still get the same conversion rates, and you could put that effort towards other people. So when we talk about mining your database, it is understanding who your best referral partners are so that when you get out of the building, you use that time wisely. It is understanding what your best conversion sources are. So when you treat every digital lead that you have. And then finally, one of my favorite reports in Welcome Home talks about it basically shows you the tortoise and the hare problem, which is it shows you how long people are stuck in each stage. And what you need to do is you need to understand who the folks are that are going to move faster. And by having those conversations pretty much every time you talk to the prospect in a perfect world, when would you move in type questions, and then tagging it so that you can start to understand, well, here's my 60 prospects that have been post-toured greater than 90 days. How many of those said that they want to move in within 1 to 3 months, right? And then you go to a subset of those prospects and you focus on them, or you understand now the cadence for all those folks that are in a 2-year process, right? Of what should I be doing in order to keep them engaged? What event should I be inviting to? So that way you maximize the time you have, because a salesperson only has so many hours in the day that they can be doing this.
Well, I think so often about Arrow Senior Living, who I know is a user of Welcome Home. And when the COVID hit, we've had conversations. You did the introduction and how they went in, and what's the term they use? Green bananas, right?
Right.
And that so much of the move-ins that they accomplished during this terrible COVID period that really helped them grow was by mining those old leads. And it's so easy to look at an old lead and say, they're never going to move in, and just move on.
Yeah.
So.
And I think now more than ever that folks that inquired over the past 2 or 3 years are uniquely positioned to be reactivated, right? Because the reason that they dropped out, differing than someone that might have gone dormant in 2015, the reason so many folks dropped out of the buying stage has nothing to do with their intention to eventually move into senior living.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're all about out of time, but there are a couple of really great comments that I want to just kind of pop up and maybe touch bases on. This is one that I particularly like. I also see a much quicker response time when using text. Just talk to me about that and what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, from using text is always going to have a quicker response time, because it's, like I said, it is a lower barrier to entry to talk to you. I could text someone while speaking on the phone on this webinar right now and respond. So it's not I'm too busy to text, right? Unless you're driving, don't text while driving. but for the most part, you can respond quicker, and in some cases it is both like less personal as well as more personal. So it is one of those situations where you don't feel like it's going to exhaust you to respond, but yet you are establishing a closer relationship.
Terrific. And then Leanne asked this question, and I frankly don't know the answer. You probably do. Do communities allow people to text as a first contact?
Yeah. So you can. There's different ways that you can do it, and I think the question is, do they allow prospects to text in, or do they allow community sales directors to text?
I think that for prospects to text in, maybe Leanne will chat in there, but that's how I read it.
Yeah. So for instance, the Welcome Home number that we provide is both for calling and texting. So from our standpoint, since all your texts are captured and recorded in Welcome Home, and prospect can either call or text that number, it's either or. I would imagine that most of those leads that would do that are probably still coming in from digital sources. They're chatting on your website and or they're inquiring, filling out a form or responding to a paid ad or something like that. I'd imagine that's the first entry. But to the point, you can have a first text response to them, which is, they're sitting at their computer, you text them right back, they pull up their phone and they respond to you. And so I think that is a great way to get in touch with people quickly. Obviously, the next stage is how quickly can you get them into the tour, though?
Yeah. So I want to just put this last slide up so people can sort of know what to search for. But, you can never have enough kind words. So I want to put this one up as well, because you guys are killing it. And I think what you're talking about is so important. I think you've given some really valuable tips. As you can tell, I'm sort of become immediately obsessed about this whole texting thing. But one of the things I find myself, as I'm not looking at senior living, but other things, is that I used to think chatbots were really cool, and now I've mostly found them to be really annoying, because so often I don't actually get a real person. And what they are really just trying to do is, they pretend like they're going to give me a real person, but then they really just want to take my email so that they can spam me later. How do senior living organizations sort of negotiate that whole chat bot thing so that people end up liking it and not hating it?
Yeah. So first and foremost, a chat bot is only as good as the effort that you put into building it on the front end. The example being that they are programmed to respond to different things and different questions in different ways that you want with certain assets. So if you've gone in and done your due diligence about what types of questions are you usually going to get, and you have key articles or key answers that'll be linked automatically when you get certain question, then it can be super useful to just get them the information that they need in that standpoint. But if you have basically, and I will ding ourselves on this at Welcome Home, if you go to the Welcome Home site and you want to chat with someone, the first thing the chat bot will do is will say, we'll typically respond, because ours is live. We'll respond in a little bit, what's your email, right? And so if you just have that and you don't have someone on the other end that is responsive and going to hop online and chat with that person, then to your point, Steve, you're going to get a little frustrated and you're going to move on. So I think it's very important that you establish this collateral, the helpful things that can educate people, or even aside from chat bots, if you use something like Rubric or something like that educates the patron, then you have the ability to understand what they actually want and where they're going with it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you're saying that, Teddy, because I'm kind of thinking it would be really, because when I get a chat and it immediately wants my email address, my immediate response is, I don't know whether I trust you enough to give you my email address. But, I have this vision of coming to the Welcome Home website. I'm creating work for you here, so I apologize for that, right? But going to the Welcome Home website, bringing up the chat bot and saying, and I go in there and say, hey, I want some information. And you say, cool, I'm going to get something for you. Here's a really cool introduction video of what we are and who we do that's maybe a little cheeky and a little fun. You guys know how to do that. Yep. And then that gives you a chance to get a live person there to really do this. And then you could even be really cheeky as you come to the end of it. You can go, hey, unbelievable. I'm actually a real person and I can hardly wait to talk to you. And then all of a sudden you set the stage for this wonderful conversation. So anyway, I don't know.
Steve, I'll give you an example of that from just a digital lead perspective. When someone inquires on a senior living community's website and they have Welcome Home, that can flow in, and we have options for automated responses via text and or email. And so when they come in and fill out a form, it's the same concept where it can send them a video, it can send them a paper or whatever it says, and says, hey, Teddy's going to be calling you shortly to talk about, moving your mom in. In the meantime, watch this video about our community. And so exactly to your point, anything that you can automate and educate at the same time is going to buy more time for you to interact on a human level in order to get them to move in.
Yeah. So I know we're about out of time, but the one thing that I keep hearing when I, in my interactions with consumers is how confusing it is. And I think that there's such an opportunity in all of this to do a better job of just helping people understand how to crush the confusion and, you maybe create some vignettes and those kinds of things. So anyway, we're past time. I know. Thank you very much. This has been amazing. I love what you do. You are Move In Monday, right? Move In Monday. This is all about helping operators get more residents into their communities, serve more people, make the world a better place. I appreciate your passion for doing that. And with that, we will be back soon. Thank you very much for watching.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.